In this episode of The Growth Engine, I'm joined by Anabela Figueiredo, a marketing leader who has built a career at the intersection of data, strategy, and technology. Currently shaping the global marketing function at Moneycorp, Anabela brings a unique perspective, having started her career in computer engineering before transitioning into finance and eventually marketing. Today, we'll explore how marketing can act as a core business growth function, the role of data in shaping strategy, and how to build a truly customer-centric organization. Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. Your career paths that you've taken is unique. You let me get this right. You started in computer engineering, moved into finance, and then come to marketing. So can you talk us through that journey that you've been on?
I think it's always been a result of my curiosity.
Right.
So I began as a computer engineer. Within the engineering, I focused on data. And I was very curious about data and data architecture and transforming data into information. But then as I started working as a consultant in the Big Four, I felt like I was curious about what was happening on the other side of my conversation. So how are these business leaders actually using this information to drive decisions, to manage? And I guess my curiosity just lended itself to an invitation to join the other side.
Right.
So I moved into management consulting rather than the data consulting. And then from management consulting, I got an invitation to work in the financial services for a insurance company.
Okay.
I'm there. I'm enjoying to learn business finance. Enjoying to do forecasting and putting a lot of my data principles at use, doing a lot of forecasting, a lot of modeling. Then I just became curious about, okay, now what? And became very interested in strategy. From there, I went to do an MBA here at London Business School and became very fascinated about strategy and the role of thinking of how do we find that fit between the global landscape and how do we find how we be able to actually deliver on customer experience. So figuring out that plan or that strategy was very interesting. And then I bumped into marketing
Right.
actually. So I went to work for a turnaround bank as head of strategy. And I had a very creative CEO who was also very much a marketeer in essence. And he figured that I can do marketing just like he did. So I was given the task to rebrand the bank. I was given a number of roles around customer experience, but also in terms of advertising and promotion, and also external internal communications.
Right.
And then as I took on these tasks and these new responsibilities, I actually realized how it was an incredible vehicle to deliver all those strategies that I've been designing in the previous years. And on top of that, it I realized I do have a creative streak to me. It's not just finance and coding. And I realized that's where I'm happiest, where I can actually activate both sides of my brain,
Yeah.
where I'm doing analytical modeling, working Excel, and then the other moment, I'm thinking about the EQ part of a brand, the EQ part of a brand promise, and how brand and communication and client experience delivers this strategy every day to customers.
Fabulous. So thinking back to your engineering days, um, are there any elements that you can sort of apply in what you're doing at Moneycorp today? Is there any sort of things that you sort of look back and, or is it just actually your experience shapes the way, as you were saying, about applying both sides of the brain?
Well, I don't know if it's nature or nurture. I don't know if I'm designed like that or it's the engineering that designed it. I do know that I make a lot of my marketing colleagues and peers and even external agencies a bit crazy when I try and put structures and boxes and sequences. And they're thinking, well, that's not how creativity works. And I'm thinking, well, that's the only way I could work in my head.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of structure. There's a lot of data informing. For me, everything that we do in marketing needs to be data led. And whether it's concrete data or data samples, there needs to be a reason to there needs to be a why to what we're delivering, and there needs to be structure. Again, putting things in boxes. The creative colleagues
Yeah.
do have a hard time with me sometimes.
Systems thinking we talked about. What is, can you expand on that?
I love systems thinking. I learned systems thinking as an engineer. I didn't realize what I was learning at the time.
Right.
It's a long time ago. I go through these classes and you're learning it, and you're structuring and you're preparing for the tests. Many years later, I start to realize that everything shit that shapes us around us is in terms of system. And one principle that I apply in systems thinking in every organization, independently of what angle I'm looking at, is a system will always behave the way it's measured. So I think that the most important management tool is actually an incentive tool, or the balance scorecard, or the recognition tool, because the system will always behave the way it's measured. If commissions or bonuses or just actual recognition models favor specific metrics, the organization will find a way to make those metrics work, and it really shapes behaviors. And in the back of behaviors is everything else. It will come ethics, it will come product, it will come client centricity or not, but it's quite fascinating. But from systems thinking, that's the main principle that I apply in everything that I do, but I've done it in strategy as well as marketing.
Right, right. I love that. Hadn't heard it talked about in that way, but you're essentially so think of the behavior that you're trying to create, put the measurement in place in order to be able to measure whether that behavior is performing in there, and then the system will flow down to that natural point.
Absolutely. Or, well, not or, as a colleague of mine says, and put a metric in place, because I guess when we're looking at it from a rational perspective, that's the metric or the KPI that we're trying to measure. But then do a little bit of backward engineering and think about, am I going to get unwanted behaviors from this metric?
Right, right,
I
yeah.
think a lot of times unintended consequences come from what we're designing, and spending a little bit of extra time thinking about, okay, how can someone can use this metric in the wrong way, and what the impact's going to have on behavior. For me, it's really important. It's quite fascinating because
Yeah.
it's quite often that we're thinking or we're looking at a balanced scorecard or we're looking at a behavior, and we can always tie it back to that KPI.
Is there any example that you can give it, either your existing role or previous role, where you've taken that strategy of the thinking of the systems thinking, and you've actually built that out into a marketing tool concept?
Not so much in terms of a marketing tool, but maybe a sales enablement tool. I'm not going to reveal out which of the various companies that I've had, what I founded. But one example that springs to mind was the sales incentive model, and it was a sales incentive model that in which the KPI and way that sales team was recognized, well, financially even, actually countered or shut down another lead generation model or channel.
Yeah,
And the in order for this specific channel, this sales channel, outbound channel to work, it meant it was inhibiting and limiting the capability of the inbound channel.
got it.
And it was quite interesting to realize that there's only so much effort and energy and investment that we can put in outbound or outreach, because it will always be limited by the other channels. So not so much in terms of marketing, but in go to market and what the impact would have on investments going inbound versus outbound.
Okay, we'll keep ourselves back on track. I'm sorry, I've taken a
No, it's quite.
detour there.
If think systems thinking is quite fascinating. I could spend the whole entire day on that.
Let's talk about communication with marketing. But you've spoken about marketing as more than just communication. You say it plays a role in shaping supply and demand. How does that thinking shape your go-to-market strategies?
At the end of the day, that's what we're doing. We're producing, we're activating supply and demand, right? And we can't do it without thinking about supply and demand. So start with the demand curve, and the sweet spot of marketing and the sweet part of any business is figuring out how to reach that where those two curves cross,
Yeah,
right? So if you think about demand, it's around understanding what clients want. I mean, I've been in financial services, and financial services is quite interesting, from consulting to insurance to banking, big global to small local. Bankers have been around all their lives. They've been studying and excelling in finance. And the answer is always, we know what's best for customers and we always have the customer's interest at heart. That's great. But how about listening to customers? Because customers know even better.
yeah, yeah,
Is,
yeah.
is is what I've been doing for about 10 years now. It is reminding people in the room that, okay, that's great. We all have customers' interest at heart, but the customers know best. So it's very much around activating and reaching out into the customer and absorbing what they actually need. It's knowing how to ask the questions, whether they're open questions or whether we're trying to take them in our own, they're leading questions, and understanding what their pain points are, understanding what their worries and concerns are, and understanding how our products and services can better help make their days a bit easier and fulfilling their potential. And for me, that's the demand part. It's how do we activate customer voice to design the customer and the product. But then, and this is very much from my strategy world, which is we don't live in isolation. No organization lives in isolation. And we can decide that, well, I'm not going to worry about who else is on my left and to the right, and I just need to be my own best version of myself. And that's great to a point, but like everything, that extreme doesn't work either. Because if I have another competitor to the left and to the right who is being quicker in terms of developing, is being more innovative in helping the customer realize they need something they didn't know they needed. Let's think about the iPhone. None of us knew that we needed an iPhone.
Yeah, yeah,
Can't remember how many decades ago, but now we all need it. We need to know, and we need to be, and we need to let these competitors also help us have an edge on ourselves, right? Sometimes having someone going a little faster is that extra motivation that you need to go quicker, to be faster,
yeah.
to be more innovative. And that's where the supply comes in, right? So when I understand what my role is in supply of a market, I understand what my customer needs are in terms of demand, and I'm able to find that sweet spot, then I'm also able to number one, design my product and services, but also deliver them in the best way possible for customers. And I just don't know how to think about marketing or business without that very simple microeconomics combination of curves.
Listening to you then, another question, or I wanted to get your view on something. So you've seen a lot of different types of businesses within financial services because of your role previously within consulting and working for a range of organizations, big to small. One of the things which I don't know if you've heard of this, the Edelman Trust Barometer. So Edelman, the global PR agency, run a trust barometer survey every year, and they look at the level of trust in certain sectors. For as long as I've been looking at it, financial services has always been the sector with the lowest trust from its customers. Until I think last year, when it came off the bottom rung and rose up a
Yes.
couple of percentage points. Now, you saying we speak to lots of people in financial services, and they always say we've got the customer's interest at our best. How can that be? There's a mismatch there, isn't there? Because if they think we've always got the customer's interest at best, I forget the word, at top of mind,
Yep.
um, but there's this misalignment because clients don't trust. There's what is either the industry doing wrong, or what do we need to do to change it? Maybe those are two different questions, actually. Do you have a view on
I have a view, but to process in real time, let's see how scrambled that's going to come out.
that?
If I go back to my insurance world, and that's where I began my career on the client side, there's a huge discrepancy and lack of trust between insurers and clients.
Right.
It's the fine print, it's the exclusions, and I think it's a mix between insurance is complex,
Yeah.
and I think, to be quite honest, I think there was many years where it was a lot of mis-selling. The
Right.
incentive, going back to systems thinking, the incentive was one more policy. Um, and let me do whatever I need to do the policy. It's usually the fear factor. Something horrible happens to you or your family,
Yeah.
you're doomed. So get this, and it was sold on the back of fear, and not enough information was brought in. What insurance companies have been doing, and they've been working on it for many years now, is making the fine print not so fine, slightly bigger,
Yeah.
turning that language into language that the customer can actually understand, and increasing transparency on exactly what a customer is getting and what's not. And I think that's the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, insurance. If insurance policies paid for everything, then we wouldn't need insurance policies.
Yeah.
We can just pay for it out of our own pocket because the price point is not going to allow for it. But I think the same thing happens with bankers. And I genuinely, having worked with a lot of bankers, and most of my friends and family actually are bankers, are in the financial services world, there is a genuine belief, and they do have the customer's interest at heart. This is actually true. I think there is a mismatch between I know best, and I think that's where it breaks.
Right.
And I think we should spend more time on ensuring the client knows best. So if financial services needs to spend more time on financial literacy, on understanding, on product literacy, on understanding the impact in medium and long term financial goals, then we can reverse it and the client knows best. And I think that that role of ensuring that the client starts to know best is what will help increase the level of trust. And that's what's been happening lately.
Yeah.
So if you look at a number of retail, especially that has a huge impact on the retail consumers, um, a lot of the banks have been moving in that direction. I don't want to bring one into mind, so we're not doing free publicity.
Yeah.
But if you look at them, we have a recent bank has recently launched a financial health tech for all their customers. That's going to increase the level of engagement and a show of concern that that bank has an increased interest in my capabilities.
Right.
It's going to help me understand my finances better and what the role of my finances are in my financial well-being. I believe it's more information. I think it's literacy. And when we flip it onto client knows best,
Yeah.
we will increase that trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I was I presumably the FCA Consumer Duty Act is part of trying to specifically with communications try to simplify the communications and make things easy and reduce that everything's hidden in the small print. Um, years ago, we did some research with savers. Why are savers and not investing? And we interviewed range of people, range of ages, and one of the things that came back is that when we have gone on to investment companies' websites, it feels impenetrable. It makes us feel stupid because we can't understand what anyone's talking about. Um, and again, listening to what you're saying now, I think when you said that, you've got a friends and family that are bankers, and actually they genuinely do want to, have their customers' best will and top of mind. I wonder if, in general, within an industry, there is a lot of jargon, there is a lot of complexity, and as a group, you start working in it, you start falling into that language without being aware of it, and then sometimes marketers have to step down, draw a line, and just go, "Hold on, we're talking in one way, but customer doesn't speak like that," and perhaps you,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I do think so. Again, one of my previous roles and the work I did on brand, it was very much about bringing down the 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 perception of arrogance
yeah,
of the banking communication and bringing and elevating what we feel the customers. And it was creating that equal
mm,
level playing field in terms of communication
yeah,
and admitting and realizing that the customer is at the same level.
yeah,
I think that's also something that's been very different, right? Banking has had a specific positioning
yeah,
until very recently, and I do think it's changing. But they do have the client's best interest at heart, and this is quite interesting too. If we go back to most people need to be engaged in what they're doing, right? And that comes from all the different types of people engagement surveys. They need to be connected to purpose. I'm not sure that many, if we were to calculate the number of percentage, people get up just to move money around the world.
no,
In their own way, they try and make sense of what they're doing.
yeah.
And it's usually to have some kind of role in people, humans, society. So bankers don't wake up just to move money around the world. They do want to deliver more, right?
I was speaking to a credit company, and they were saying, actually, what we're helping to do is to fund real businesses, right? Fund, and that was their passion. It was, yeah, it's financial service money, but their view is that they are contributing to society by launching all of these endeavors and
Yeah, and
entrepreneurialism.
enabling ideas and
Yeah,
enabling projects.
yeah, absolutely. Right, well, we are really going off track on every
Let's go
question.
back.
So, in a previous role, you applied machine learning to redefine product positioning. Uh, how do you share data, and has AI changed your approach to marketing?
Let's go back to the beginning of my career. We're not going to say exactly how many decades that was, but I was focused on art. I was focused on data. I was focused on data architect, and I was focused on very curious about artificial intelligence. We didn't have the systems or the processes that we do today, and I'm very fascinated by AI. So working with a previous role, working with a data scientist at the time, both fascinated by the role of technology in business and business in technology, especially machine learning. We created a side desk project, which was I wonder if we can put that machine learning listening to transactions and what would he or she, whatever we decide the machine learning is, tell us is the anchor product.
Okay.
And having been in financial services, usually marketing or usually someone in the business, usually in product, decides this is the anchor product, whether it's mortgage or credit cards.
Just for my clarity, when you say anchor product, you mean the core product of
The
the
core
business?
product that will create loyalty or and bring and attract customers. And then you have the cross-selling and upselling of the other products around it.
Got it. Okay.
Right. And usually the focus is on that credit, on that anchor product. As they go to market, it will usually where the biggest discounts are, usually where the biggest promotion and marketing investment and energy goes. And then
Right.
all the other ones come along
Okay.
and they become cross-selling and upselling, right? And it's funny because depending on the market, but there are many markets, for example, in banking that thought it was mortgages. And we put the machine learning and said, let's just see what happens. And out of curiosity, let's see if it confirms that it's mortgages. And here's the curiosity coming into play.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It wasn't. It turned out that it wasn't that specific product. It was
Wow.
actually everyday transactions in banking using your credit card or your debit card
Wow.
because you're
What an insight.
interacting with the brand every day, right? And you're looking at it. You might even think that you're looking at it, but
Yeah.
you're looking at it
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
building a relationship every day because you're looking at it every day. Just like you have a closer relationship to those humans that you see more often, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so it's quite interesting because that just totally changed the paradigm around what the go to market should be, what the pricing should be, what the cross selling and upselling should be, and in what order it should take place. I think it's fascinating because AI will allow us to question our own beliefs. I like questioning my own
Yeah.
beliefs. I like being shown that I'm wrong and
Sure.
figuring out.
Engineering background again.
I do. I like being told that I'm wrong and why,
Yeah.
and given an opportunity to reshape and redesign from scratch. Go back to the board. Go back to the drawing board, but with more information this time, and knowing that Plan A doesn't work. And if we have all this data nowadays, that can help us go into designing, knowing being a lot better informed. It will increase our opportunities to be a lot more productive in the energy that we do employ, whether it's in marketing or it's in go to market or it's in product design or product improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Um,
Can't remember if I answered the question.
I asked how it's sort of changing, I guess, the way that you're thinking about utilizing AI and data, and how that's
That was the past example. Now I'm even more fascinated. So I took a sabbatical for about a year and a half, and I come back into the market, want to bring in some customer experience tools. What do I discover that they do now? And with some passion that I have also on colleague engagement and the role that has in business productivity, we now have tools that correlate client satisfaction with employee engagement. And intuitively, I think all of us know, every single person that's ever been any contact with any business know that happier colleagues produce happier and more satisfied customers. But now you have that data
right.
that proves and really reinforces that idea. And I think that allows us to shape organizations and organizational models and cultures in a very different way.
That's super interesting. So I just want to drill down into that to explore something. So, am I right in saying that from the role of a marketing perspective, which the role that there is exploring customer satisfaction and how can we improve customer satisfaction? What you're saying is that there's tools now that we can link up to employee employee satisfaction, which is sits more traditionally within an HR remit.
Yes.
But now with these tools, you've got the ability for HR to be working in conjunction with marketing in order to deliver a better outcome.
Oh, absolutely. That's where systems thinking comes in, right? No,
Yeah,
no, no, no pieces work in silo, and they shouldn't work in silo. The benefit comes when they intertwine together. But yes, there are a number of studies that there are a number of studies that prove or show that client engagement has a huge impact in customer engagement and productivity of an organization. But now we start to have tools that organizations can implement in their own workplace to do that connectivity. And could you imagine if you're working in a bank in the UK, for example, that has hundreds of thousands of branches, and you're able to do that correlation,
yeah,
pinpoint where our colleagues are unhappy, unsatisfied, disengaged, and you see the correlation with clients,
yeah.
but you're able to actually have a number of interventions in that little bubble and
To
impact those
impact it.
customers. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if it you could be if it almost acts as a sort of early warning system. So is that technology available now, or that's the direction we're
No, no,
heading
that
in?
technology is available now. It
Are you
haven't, I haven't,
implementing
I'm
that, or
trying
can you
to,
say
I'm going
that?
to try and implement it one day. Not going to say
Wow.
exactly when,
Yeah,
but I do want to implement it one day. It's absolutely fascinating.
that really is. Yeah, especially the I guess the impact that that can have on global businesses,
Yes.
having that transparency. Fascinating.
So I see AI and data basically informing everything that we do
Yeah,
in go to market and marketing. So the how and the why and the what comes out will be better informed.
yeah. So we start. Well, I've skirted around the edges there of saying, so is that stuff that you're implementing now at Moneycorp? So let's talk more specifically
Yep.
about Moneycorp. So you've been in the role, I believe, 7, 8 months
Yep.
now, um, and transforming the marketing function. That's
Trying.
definitely, I'm sure. What's been your priorities? What have you come into the presumably come in first few months is finding your feet, working out what it is that you want to do. What are those priorities now on your to do list?
I think the first and probably biggest priority and where I have most of my energy is repositioning the role of marketing within an organization.
Right.
I there still are marketing can be a lot of things depending on what organization you're at.
Yeah.
Previous organizations, whereas before marketing was a function of strategy, business development, commercial design, and then PR and internal comms, as well as the actual advertising, promotion, and branding. So full left to right brain function. Other places, usually in organizations that are bigger, it's a lot more sliced up, and marketing will be more of the brand and advertising.
Yeah.
And I left marketing out of that on purpose because I think marketing has a lot more of the strategic and rationale and modeling perspective too. Um, and at Moneycorp, traditionally, it was very much around brand and advertising promotion.
Right.
So it's about repositioning and in the organization around okay, we're bringing in new capabilities and new skills into the organization that will serve the organization in a different way, and that takes time.
Yeah.
Takes time for the rest of the organization to adapt and understand and know how to leverage these new capabilities and what its role is in helping getting to its next step. Um, that in itself is a process,
Yeah.
but then it's also about building the capabilities. So we're bringing in the skills around and the analytics, plugging into the data and using the data to inform us in what we do and how we do it. We're building in, and one of the big work streams that we're building are very much around the customer experience.
Right.
I think we've noticed that what I think is the most important part of a marketing function is having the voice of the customer within the organization. And we are building those capabilities to tap into customers, whether it's a wide outreach through surveys or starting to design those workshops where we sit in a room in focus groups and listen to customers and get answers to questions we didn't know we had. But it's also about how we transform those insights to market products, but it's also on how we turn those insights into shape products. But it's also around how do we turn those insights into how we serve clients. So What role is it going to have in shaping continuous improvement in operations? The end of the day, if we can get it right, I almost feel like saying that at the end of the day, and you're doing the budget process for the next year. Usually, the biggest process, the budget goes to IT, and you'll have the voice of the customer telling the organization where it should be investing,
Yeah.
depending on what it matters most to that customer. So again, it's activating customers, bringing it into the heart of the organization for service and design, and helping it almost define the metabolic rate of the organization going forward.
Well, listening to you speak, I'm envisaging you building the voice of the customer in as a both in the way that you go out and have, I guess, moments in time voice of the customers through surveys or similar, but potentially there's a way to have that continuous, always on voice of the customer coming in to the business as well, so that you're creating that constant supply of data which is
Yep.
shaping the performance. But presumably there must be a business strategy that sits on top of that as well, that is saying these are the questions that we want to learn from the voice of the customer in order to help us succeed on the overarching strategy of the business.
Oh, absolutely. No, no. The organization has a very clear strategy at a high level in terms of corporate, and it also has a very clear strategy in terms of business and where it would like to go.
Yeah.
And I'd say where it'd like to go, because if we say where we want to go, then we go back into that arrogant space.
Yeah.
So where we think we'd like to go, where we think the customer wants, where we very strongly believe, but we want to confirm
Yeah.
with the customer that that's the right way to serve him and her.
And I'm asking about that specifically because you said previously at Moneycorp it was the more sort of brand advertising communication side of marketing, which, as we know, is one part.
Yep.
But it seems that the stuff you've been brought in to is a recognition from the business that actually marketing can be a lot more. It's the strategy side, so it can act as that growth driver to help us achieve the strategy.
Yes, now there definitely is a strategy, and it was that strategy, that significant ambition, that brought the recognition that we want a different type of marketing in the business, plugging in and supporting
Yeah.
all the other areas. Because when you have at this size of transformation, marketing is just one small piece of the puzzle
Yeah.
that's reinventing itself in an organization like Moneycorp.
Mm.
I'd say all the different parts of the value chain are finding themselves reinventing,
Yeah.
and upgrading ourselves to the next level. Well, I think what we're trying to do as a management team is ensuring that this time, going back to the systems thinking,
Yeah.
we're not in all separate lanes, but we're like a puzzle, connected, so we're growing also together.
Mm.
And that's also part of the business strategy, the how on the delivery.
Going back to the original question, the to-do list of the 7 months. So repositioning the role of marketing within the business. So there's a lot to be done there. Embedding the voice of the customer into the, so those are the two.
Embedding the voice of the customer. I think there's something around connectivity.
Yeah.
And you'll see all global businesses go through phases where franchise for a few years, a lot of adapting, a lot of autonomy in the different businesses around the globe. And then there's this big swing to the other side where it becomes corporate. When that becomes too strong, it goes back into franchise. So all organizations flip back and forth toward franchises. I think now is a moment where Moneycorp can globalize a bit.
Right.
And that's about ensuring that there is a unique voice across the firm. It means that there's a unique way about we present ourselves across the globe. It's that we connect with customers with the same level, with the same communication, with the same messaging, with the same caring points, not just talking points, in a very similar way, especially because most of our clients will be naturally global
Yeah.
as we think about connectivity in terms of a global payments and FX platform, right?
With the drive for Moneycorp now, how do you manage that overarching global messaging, but you are so localized within what more so probably than most other businesses that you have to really refine that localized messaging as well, I would assume.
What we're doing is that we're creating a global backbone,
Yeah.
and we're giving enough room for adaptation and localization.
Okay.
What we need to ensure is that the localization doesn't lose sight of of the global
Yeah.
backbone.
Is there a system
There
that
is a system.
you put in place to encourage that? Because you can't be policing that, I
No,
imagine, across the volume of territories that you're over. So
Well, we've created a global function, so we
Yeah,
do have representation across all of geographies to make sure that all voices are represented. We're getting closer and closer to the business, the actual humans that interact with our clients. That's where I call the part of the business, to ensure that we have greater alignment. We're also putting in really basic stuff. So, um, on one end, we have these very fancy, I'm not going to put the name so we're not doing free branding, but we have these very fancy tools that do customer experience and client and employee experience and do all these correlations with AI. But then there's very basic stuff. So we just launched a very simple SharePoint portal
right. Yeah,
that is now accessible through every colleague around the whole group, where we have our framework and our branding and our value proposition in terms of global narrative,
yeah,
and where we have all the different sites also on that same portal with their own localization, but where everybody can see it.
yeah, I-
So it's not like one specific geography can localize it and someone on the other side of the pond doesn't know what the localization looks like,
yeah.
but it's there. Sometimes it's basic stuff. Sometimes it's just a robust SharePoint portal that everyone can access.
Yeah, it's kind of like common sense approach, getting the basics right. And if maybe they haven't been there before, you got to have that infrastructure working. Presumably, educating the team around
Why?
yeah why it's important,
Yeah.
consistency, all of that stuff that goes into it. Is there more information that you can sort of say that within the role that you're actually doing at the moment, breaking it down a bit more granularly, how the steps you are to actually embed the voice of the customer in? Previously, when we had an initial conversation around this, you talked around sentiment analysis, feedback loops, NPS thing. I'm probing around that area.
We're still very much the initial phase. We just created the function at the beginning of the year and brought in someone to lead that. So very, very initial phase. But we do have a architectural skeleton of where we want to go.
Yeah,
So there'll be something around having direct feedback from customers, whether it's after a specific service, and getting that post-service feedback loop, or having a general sentiment analysis. How's that relationship going? Are we strengthening or are we losing points with the customer
yeah,
in a specific aspect? And then it's those different workshops in the service and the post-service surveys that we're launching. We want to implement something that is very known in customer experience world, which is the close the loop. So if there's a specific trade that happened, a customer wasn't happy, there's a reason why. We want to get that information very quickly and we want to respond to the customer within a very short SLA. I don't know what that short SLA will be yet because it depends on the different case studies that will come through. But we have those, which is very direct, one-to-one, close the loop. And then we have the ones where we want to turn it into actionable insights, where it then becomes reporting that we plug into the different parts of the value chain of the organization.
and that's where in you alluded to that earlier about saying the business has a view on where it thinks it wants to go, but actually the voice of the customer should be the one that actually dictates that.
Absolutely. So it's about checking and validating with the customer
Yeah,
that we're on the right direction.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Brilliant.
And that's where a little bit of a humbleness comes into play in leadership and in business development too, right?
Do you think businesses within financial services are getting better at being humble?
I genuinely do. I think the bringing in the voice of the customer, the having the customer support where an organization goes is it's increasing, and you see from the value proposition that we're all getting,
Yeah.
whether it's a better app, whether it's different types of notifications, whether it's different auxiliary tools and functions that we're getting on managing our finances better. It's because there is an increasing care about what we want, right, and what adds value to us.
I wonder if it's also driven by the fact that there's more data now to prove the impact that it has for
Yeah, but
for
that's
for the
across the board.
yeah.
More data will help us get more informed decisions.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's go back into as we've gone a lot into the strategy side, but I'm also keen to talk about the brand building elements as well.
Yep.
That you're being tasked with. Um, how do you balance the brand building side with the actual commercial drivers of the business?
It has to be fully aligned. I think that's what's also fascinating in today's world on brand. I think brand, there are a lot of ways to look at brand.
Yeah.
And before I tapped into the marketing space, a brand to me, very naively so, was that it was a pretty sticker. It was a color, it was a design. And I never thought much about whether it's a square or a circle or whatever designs behind it or a bird, what color it is and what initials are being used. To be very honest, when I was working in the engineering and finance and even strategy space, and having dived into customer analysis, customer sentiment, understanding how customers perceive products and services, you realize there's a lot more behind a brand than just a color.
Yeah.
And for me, branding is everything else that supports that color or that design or that name. It's is this brand trustworthy? Can I trust them with my finances that I worked so hard to save and to put away? Can I trust that it's going to transfer a a a, my finances in the moment that I need as quickly as I need if I have a son or a relative somewhere far that I need to get funds to? Is it going to help me save for tomorrow in the way that I need, so that when I get to tomorrow, I'm where I need to be. Um, I think a brand, the first thing I think comes behind a brand is the level of trust. And that's what I like to work on in terms of brand and what does this brand mean and what does it translate into. I think with that done, half of the work and half of the productivity that comes from the commercial aspect is already done.
Right. I see. Yeah.
So I think it will be one story to have a sales outreach when the brand isn't known. There's a whole selling on brand, and then there's a selling on product, and then there's a selling on SLAs, and then there's a selling on the price point for all of the above. When a brand is already known and there's a trusted aspect, half the sell is already done or not.
Yeah.
And then it's just around talking about the product and the service that it's bringing. So I don't think they can work separately.
Yeah.
And I think the brand is about it is exactly how you can deliver a business to customers.
When you consider the 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 customer, the voice of the customer, and you bunch all of the businesses within financial services, it's awful to do, but the financial services sector, the 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 delivery, the outputs of what they're doing, and the reasons why the customers use these companies are very emotionally driven reasons. Their whole lives are caught up within them, and I think it's surprising how I don't think the financial services sector as a whole is as advanced in its brand thinking as other sectors. But I think that those brands and businesses that do have a deep understanding of the impact of the importance of it generating trust within clients, I think that they will excel within the markets compared to those ones that don't. And
Absolutely.
I see some fantastic businesses that are really advanced with their thinking of brand and the potential, the importance of it. But some people that really still don't pay it much thought or consideration, and I think that that's a mistake.
No, I completely agree. If I can bring in my hobby into the conversation. So one of my hobbies where I like to spend time when I do have time is on the role of mental health in the workplace.
Right.
And I've done massive amount of studying and research on it. And it was quite interesting. I was working at a bank when I bumped into mental health and the role of mental health in the workplace. When I realized one of the main contributors for lack of mental health is actually lack of financial health.
Right.
So, if we think about the role that financial services can play in improving financial health and the impact it will have in improving the mental health of society, it could be massive. And that's when I fell in love with financial services and I decided I was in the right industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Fabulous.
And you can think of it as a family and a human, but you can also think of it as the financial health of an organization. Because if you're building financial health of an organization, you're in turn protecting employment, you're protecting families once again.
Yeah. Yeah. You are a member of an organisation that's supporting mental health within workplaces as
I
well.
am. I am part of Mind Forward Alliance.
Right.
It's actually an organization that started in the UK here in London
Right.
about now I'm starting to forget, but about 15 years ago, and it's gone global.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to have established the chapter of Mind Forward Alliance in Portugal a couple of years ago, which is how I occupied the last that year and a half that I was off of the corporate world.
I find that fascinating. The because there's something I've been very interested in about financial education, mainly because when I grew up, I had such poor financial education, and now I have kids, and it's top of mind. And I've often thought that the industry could do more collectively to promote that within schools. I've got friends that are school teachers. He tells me that financial education is taught within schools, but it's only taught a very small amount. What's the situation like in Portugal?
I don't think we're there yet.
No.
I don't think we're there yet in Portugal. I'm an academic junkie if you look at my LinkedIn. I
Yeah.
like going and getting certifications and getting classes and doing tests and preparing for the tests and the work. It's just something I like to do. But if I had a vote as a parent and as a member of society, I would vote to delay some of the academic learning that we have, whether it's math programs or
Yeah.
learning programs or science, and I would bring in financial health and financial literacy a lot younger, a lot earlier.
Yeah.
I think there are too many families that suffer and aren't at their best because of lack of financial literacy.
I read a couple of days ago, so I can't think of where it was now, but that your relationship with money, the links that you start making with it start as young as 9 or 10 or something. It was a very.
I would say even younger.
Would you? Yeah.
I would say even younger. I have a 19-year-old, almost 19-year-old, and he was around 4 or 5 when one day I discovered this big bag of coins in his book bag.
Right.
And I'm mortified, thinking, what is he doing? Is he stealing from us? Is it, or where's he taking these coins from? I'm getting very nervous around. And I sit down with him and I'm like, where are you getting this money from? And he can realize that I was getting nervous, so he was scared to answer. And then I discovered that he was selling cookies at school.
Right.
So he was taking cookies from our cupboard and he was selling, I don't know if it was 20 or 30 cents in Portugal. He was making money. So five.
That's
A
fantastic.
lot younger than we think.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. Wow. 5 years old he was doing
5 years old. 4 or 5, he was in reception.
Amazing. That'll be a story at his wedding. My opposite story to that is that my son, uh, we suddenly got alerted on Amazon that we had ordered something about 150 plastic figurines that were suddenly coming through, and bill for over $1,000. We were like, what? So yeah, less entrepreneurial than yours.
Were you
Um,
able to cancel that?
we did cancel it, thankfully. We didn't. Can you imagine them all coming through the letterbox on the same day? No. Okay, let's go back on track again. On to brand. Moneycorp's brand architecture. When you've come in, it wasn't quite where you felt it needed to be, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Um, how are you evolving the brand architecture? What does that look like in a kind of day to day, what's in front of me to do list approach?
The brand architecture we have today is absolutely natural result of how an organization grows, like Moneycorp, where it starts with a specific product, a specific servicing, and a specific geography. And then there's an add-on, and you do a small little adjustment to the brand. And then there's another add-on and segment, and another little adjustment, and then another geography, and another little adjustment.
Right. Yeah.
Then there's an acquisition, and there's another slightly different adjustment. And all of a sudden, the result of this architecture is not really premeditated or engineered. It's a result of the actual natural growth. So I think there's a point in time where we need to go back to the beginning and go back to the drawing board, design that skeleton, and understand, how am I going to organize my brand in terms of geography? How am I going to reorganize my brand in terms of customer segments and products and even sub-segments? And I think we just need to go back to the drawing board. So we're again, I'm only 7 months in, and we're going back to the drawing board. But what we really want to do is have that thinking in terms of, I almost call it like architecture and a bit of engineering behind it,
Yeah.
and ensure that when we do redesign it, it will be scalable. So if tomorrow we want to increase segments, we want to increase geographies, we want to reshape the geographical footprint. So maybe it's not a country, it's a region, or the other way around. It will have that flexibility to adapt to it.
Listening to you describe it in that way, it sounds like most businesses will go through a kind of issues with it because of the just the rate of the growth phases that a business goes through. Once you get to a certain size, you have to go back and restructure that to
Absolutely.
fit for purpose for its next stage of a business's life.
Absolutely. This organization's been around for 45 years.
Yeah,
It has been reinventing itself in terms of products and services and positioning quite impressively. So it's natural that the
yeah,
architecture now needs a rethink
yeah.
to where it is today and where it wants to go tomorrow.
And I think thinking back to listeners of the podcast that may be thinking about that they have to go through a similar challenge within their organizations that they're working for. What's the sort of one piece of advice you'd give to those people that are going to go through that process of transformation within the business growth?
I'll always go back to my starting point, which is curiosity. I think for marketeers, but not just, I think all leaders should always hold a huge element of curiosity. What are we missing? What are we getting wrong? What are our clients telling us? What's the data telling us? What are our peers out there telling us? And not forget that we don't exist alone in the world. So we can go back to that price point in the microeconomic curve. Um, and just explore, right? I think keep an open mind and explore around listening. Again, we might have our customers' best interests at heart, but let's listen to customers and what the past is telling us too. So definitely curiosity. What else can we do? If I can give two more pieces of advice, I would add a number two, which is speak the language of the business. Marketing needs to work with a lot of different parts of the value chain of an organization. It needs to work with IT. It needs to work with finance. It needs to work with HR a lot more than we think. It needs to work with product. I guess going back to that jargon around finance you were saying a little while ago, I think we need to also park the marketing jargon
Yeah,
and have the ability to speak the language of finance and IT and product and HR and understand how these roles intertwine so that we are able to have a conversation around the table and not just a branding and promotional conversation around the table. I think if we're able to do that, we're able to add a lot more value in terms of what we're trying to deliver, contributing, but also receiving from the different areas of a business. And then lastly, but not least, marketing can be absolutely fascinating, especially for creative minds. I have a creative daughter who will get lost in the designs and the creativity and all of the emotional impact and beauty that comes from the creative part of marketing. I think one thing that I would definitely suggest and recommend to all marketeers is not to remove or reduce any of that, but ensure that there's always connectivity between the creative part and the commercial aspects
yeah.
because it will only serve and will only work if it's connected and it's actually producing results. So, if I'm doing an amazing event, how can I track it? Is it producing the results that I needed? And if it's not, it's okay because information on what's not working is just as valuable as what is working. Is a commercial or advertising campaign and piece working? I might think it was the best logo I ever thought of, but did it resonate with customers? Did it make my customers think of what I wanted them to think of and resonate with them? Bring in those data points to check whether what we're delivering is the right messaging. So it's very much around ensuring the commercial impact, whether it's direct in terms of revenues and customer growth, or indirect and is intermediate KPIs that will help us then deliver products and services to customers.
You said, and this has been coming up a lot in conversations I've been having about the importance of CMOs and folk within marketing to be able to speak the language of the CFO and the CEO to actually give marketers chance to actually have an impact in those bigger issues within the business. If you've come from a traditional marketing background, just studying marketing, that stuff isn't, you don't pick that stuff up. So where do people go in order to close that gap, in order to start improving their skill sets within speaking the language of the CFO? Or are there resources that you'd point them to? What would if someone in your team came to you with that question, what advice would you give them?
To go back to my first piece of advice a little while ago, which is curiosity,
Yeah,
right? And one of the probably most impactful leaders in my career. Always reminding me that it's okay to come to a table and ask questions.
Okay. Yeah.
We didn't all show up. I'm definitely wouldn't say I am fully experienced in all the financial services that I've dipped in and out of. I think it's absolutely okay to walk out of a room and say, I didn't get that feature of a product. What does that do again?
Yeah.
How does that serve customers? How does that work? Why do customers pay for it? Or sorry, I didn't get that, that financial report. What is it trying to tell me? What does it
Yeah.
mean about the past? What does it mean about the future? What impact does it have anywhere else? Or whether it's operations. Sorry, I don't get that. Why are we doing that? AML, what is AML? Why are we doing all these questionings? Why is it so hard? I think it's absolutely fine
Yeah.
to ask the
Just
question. So
ask those questions. Yeah.
the internet is amazing and you can get courses on everything. You can get mini MBAs and get free probably online programs and learning from whatever we want. But in organizations, you can just tap around your colleagues.
Yeah.
Go into a meeting and ask questions. And it's okay to ask questions, not know.
Yeah. Yeah. That goes back to our very original point that we started talking about off camera about the importance of being in and around the work to actually be in a position to ask those questions.
Yes, I do believe that we're in an interesting moment in time where we've gone from lack of flexibility to integrate work and personal life, and the full hybrid and remote. I might have gone to
Yeah.
the other extreme, and I think it's time for us to find a balance so that we can have those conversations by the water cooler and the coffee machine
Yeah.
and ask those questions. What was that about again?
Yeah. Yeah. Just to, in order to do exactly this, just to
Yes.
be more curious and learn faster. And yeah, fabulous. Thanks so much, Anna, for joining us. I've thoroughly enjoyed our discussion this afternoon. I hope it's been okay for you as
It's
well.
fantastic. Thank you. Definitely a good opportunity to take a step back and think about everything holistically.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, and good luck with your career at Moneycorp and getting all of those to-do lists ticked off the list.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening today to The Growth Engine. If you enjoyed this episode and like to hear more, please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from and follow us on LinkedIn for regular updates or on hubagency.co.uk. Thank you and see you next time.